Hello brothers and sisters and subscribers, thank you so much for everyone looking in. I really appreciate it. I want to do an interesting video, hopefully it's not too long. I've been meaning to do a video about this because about the 70th Jubilee, as the title suggests. The 70th Jubilee has arrived, or 120 final Jubilee, as my brother Mike 444 has done a video about that, and I will show a clip of one of his videos. And not only is it, people don't realise we're actually, it's quite major. We're in a Jubilee year, and I believe, you know, the final 70th Jubilee, and within it there should be the beginning of Jacob's trouble. That's why I put 70th Jubilee has arrived in 2025, and Jacob's trouble to begin soon. I will talk about that after, but let me read what even the Pope and the Vatican and the Catholic Church, they're celebrating 2025 as a year of Jubilee. You know, he started to celebrate it, Pope Francis, before he sadly passed, but we have so let me read from Leviticus 25, chapter 25, about the Jubilee year. And Yahweh God spoke further to Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel, and you must say to them, when you eventually come into the land that I'm giving you, then the land must observe a Sabbath to Yahweh God." So did you hear that? When the Jubilee year would be beginning, God told Moses on Mount Sinai that the beginning of the Sabbath Jubilee count would begin when Joshua would enter the promised land, but he unfortunately didn't, but Joshua did in 1406 BC. So from that point you count it, the first one. So it says here, when you eventually come into the land that I'm giving you, then the land must observe a Sabbath or Jubilee to Yahweh. 6 years you should sow your field with seed, and 6 years you should prune your vineyard, and you must gather the land's produce. But in the 7th year there should occur a Sabbath of complete rest for the land, a Sabbath to Yahweh. So the 7th day is a Sabbath rest. This it was also including in a Sabbath is a year of rest for the land, a sabbatical. That was the 7th year, as it says here. 6 years you should sow your fields with seed, and 6 years you should prune your vineyards, and you must gather the land's produce. But in the 7th year there should be a Sabbath of complete rest for the land, sabbatical as it were for the land, a Sabbath to Yahweh. Your field you must not sow with seed, and your vineyard you must not prune. So it's a rest for the land, and it goes on to say, and you must count for yourself 7 Sabbaths. Now this is the Jubilee of years, 7 times 7 years, and the days of the 7th Sabbaths of years must amount to 49 years for you. And then you must cause the horn of loud tone to sound on the 49th year, in the 7th month, that's September, October time, on September time, on the 10th of the month, on the Day of Atonement. That's Yom Kippur. And you people should cause the horn, I think ram's horn, to sound in all your land. And you must sanctify the 50th year and proclaim liberty in the land to all its inhabitants. It will become a jubilee for you, and you must return each one to his possession and you should return each one to his family. So what do you call it? So as a Jubilee, since not only is it a sabbatical rest for the land, a Jubilee, 7 times 7, that's 49 years, is a Jubilee for the land, but also return the property to the original owner. You know, if Jewish people, owned land originally, they would go back to the original land, but also be released from debt and release captives. You know, and also it goes on to say, take care of the poor and vulnerable, which are forgotten. It's a rest. You know, that's like a 7 times 7. That really means a Jubilee year, which we are now. It's a complete Sabbath rest. Like a restoration, a reset, release from debts, release prisoners, return to the property. So it's a bit like reset or restoration. And did you hear what it said? It said, according to Leviticus 25, it's from the 49th year you are to proclaim or blow the horn or shofar on the 49th year, on the 10th day of the 7th month. That was Yom Kippur. 6 months before, the start of, the Jubilee. Many brothers online have forgotten to account for the 6 months you forget the 6 months proclaiming prior for the Jubilee. You've got to proclaim it 6 months before. So in fact it actually started on Yom Kippur in in 2024, and it started in Nisan, 30th of March 2025. See, so that's what it says here, as it's so as it says it, a little article. So it begins on 1406 BC. That's the count till now. So it's the 70th Jubilee. According to some biblical scholars, including Roger Young and Heather R., the 70th Jubilee year since Israel entered the Promised Land with Joshua in 1406 BC would be from Yom Kippur 2024, as I said, because 6 months before blowing the horn, to on the 49th year in Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur 2025, or specifically starting from Nisan 2025. So will you believe it? So it actually says it there. So will you believe it? We're actually in this. It's quite major. It began in March 30th. So I did a little diagram to help. So the announcements, unfortunately, some brothers have forgot 6 months prior. They think it started last year in Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, on October 2024, but you got to announce it 6 months prior. My brother Mike 444 told me about that, and then 6 months later, that's announcement actually starts in Nisan 1, the beginning of a new Jewish year, biblical New Year, which began on March the 30th, 2025. So our Jubilee just began about a few months ago, and it should end 1 year later, in mid-March, which is last day of the month of Adar in 2026, 1 year. So it's quite major then, isn't it? Because especially when what do you call it? Yeshua alluded to the fact that when he was reading Isaiah, that the day of the Lord's vengeance, the day of vengeance would occur within a Jubilee year. I would speak about that. Let me see. When Yeshua Mashiach was around 2,000 years ago, he went into a synagogue and he read from Isaiah's prophecy. And this is what it's in Isaiah 61, verse 1 to 2. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. The year of the Lord's favour is a Jubilee. So many have said that he started ministry during the Jubilee year, possibly 2025 AD. That make it exactly 2,000 years. And he stopped short of saying, and he also he was the one that would proclaim freedom to captives and release from darkness from the prisoners, because he fulfilled the Jubilee, as it were, forgiving debts and sin. He stopped short of saying, and the day of vengeance of our Lord. So he stopped short of saying that because he knew it was for some future time. Is that future time now? So the day of vengeance of our God. And what you believe? So it's, you know what I mean. So there's always something very important occurred during a Jubilee. But let me read a bit more about showing that we are in we call it the 70th Jubilee. There has been a question that puzzled people, even myself. Even I thought the Jubilee year began, 70th Jubilee began last year in Yom Kippur time, but people are confused about 49 year when the Jubilee starts, or the 50th year. But I found an article that just shows, just like we said, that it's just proclaimed on the 49th year. As it says here, when does this is from article thomasnoss.com, which answers this very thing. When does the Jubilee year? In the following quote, Hebrew scholar Dr. Nehemiah Gordon answers two questions. He discusses the 49 or 50 year question, and he clarifies when the year of Jubilee begins, in which month. Sorry, it's getting a bit dark, it's a bit dark outside. He clarifies when the year of Jubilee begins, in which month of the year. It's announced by a trumpet blast on the Day of Atonement in October. Then the year of Jubilee begins on the next, as we said, Hebrew New Year day, close to the spring equinox in March. In the Torah it says the following: and you shall pass a shofar of blasting in the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, on the Day of Atonement. You shall pass a shofar throughout the land. This verse is saying that a shofar should be used to announce the arrival of the Jubilee year, the 50th year in a sabbatical system. It does not say that Jubilee begins on the Day of Atonement, only that the impending arrival of the Jubilee year is announced on the Day of Atonement. The shofar is to be passed throughout the land on Yom Kippur on the 49th year, 6 months before the beginning of the coming Jubilee. This interpretation is supported by immediate context in Leviticus 25 verse 8 that says to count 49 years. Verse 9 says to pass the shofar throughout the land, and verse 10 says to proclaim the 50th year as a Jubilee. This shows that the shofar announcement, the coming Jubilee, in verse 9, is passed throughout the land. The Jubilee is actually proclaimed in verse 10. So it's actually proclaimed, and then for the following year. Evidence suggests the 70th Jubilee will start in March 2025. Archaeological evidence. When did the Shemitah Jubilee cycle start? To know which modern year is a Jubilee cycle, we must have a reference point to calculate it from. According to Leviticus chapter 25, it says the Jubilee cycle started when Israel entered the Promised Land. Yes, so that is, as I said, the BibleArchaeology.com article convincingly proves that Israel entered the Promised Land in 1406 BC. Sorry about the light. It's a little bit, as I said, a bit dull. Reputable secular sources widely agree on the date of Israel entered the Promised Land in 1406 BC. So that's the starting point. And a search on their website provides many references. And it says, one of the things they say in Bible Archaeology link, the commencements of the conquest can be dated exactly, with the Exodus datable to 1446 BC. The conquest automatically is dated to 1006 BC because for 40 years the sons of Israel walked in the wilderness before entering Canaan in Joshua 5:6. Since the crossing of the Jordan River transpired on the 10th day of the first month, a date of the 28th of April 1406 BC is fixed as the day in which Israelites crossed into Canaan. So, based on the 1406 start date and a 49-year Jubilee year, the 70th Jubilee will start on the day 1 of Hebrew calendar 2025. So it's the 70th and last Jubilee, depending on which Hebrew calendar God uses. It would begin on either, it would be March 30, Nisan 1 in 2025. So there we have it. And it's 70th Jubilee. 70th Jubilee. Well, boy, that's 70th Jubilee. That's amazing. As I've done a little. So we're in the 70th Jubilee. It starts. The count starts from 1406 BC. So 1005, and I made it every 500 years is equal to 10 Jubilee cycles. So 1406 BC to Christ's first coming is 30 Jubilees, and then you add another 40 Jubilees till now, because 2,000 years have passed. So 30 and 40 Jubilees is 70 Jubilees. So this is, we're in as also that article says, it's just began. Boy, and every time, Jubilee year things, major occurrences occur. Major occurrences occur. So, like my brother pointed out in a video that he did. What do you call it? But also, like exactly 50 years ago, almost to the day, when the unfortunate attack on October 7 in Israel was a Jubilee. Last Jubilee in the 70s was the Yom Kippur War. There's always, big major events that happen. Also, my brother Mike, he did a video, also 120th final Jubilee. He did a video called "This Is It," 120th and final Jubilee approaches. So I'm doing, it's the 70th Jubilee, whichever you look at it, what do you call it, from 1406 BC, or 120 from creation to now. So, he did a video, and where he reads from, I will leave a link also to the 120th final Jubilee, where he reads from the book of Jubilees. In fact, Moses was, when he was given the Ten Commandments, Angel Gabriel also revealed to him all the Jubilees up to Exodus. Though it begins from 1406 BC, again, it was 50 Jubilees, and that's why you get the book of Jubilees. My brother's reading from that. And Angel Gabriel told him all the important things that happens in a Jubilee year. And I give you some examples, but I will leave a link. And that's why Moses wrote the book of Jubilees, because it's all about Jubilees. It was about creation, when God created Adam and Eve, that was on a Jubilee. Then when Eve, certain Jubilees, when Eve gave birth to Cain, that was another Jubilee year. And then another one when Eve gave birth to Abel, the first woman, Adam's wife. And then Adam dies, that was on another Jubilee. And then Noah, and the flood, that was on another Jubilee. And Abraham, that was on another Jubilee. Anyway, I will leave a link. See, all important events. So I'm, like my brother Mike, we're doing this as watchmen to warn people. The day of God's vengeance, or Jacob's trouble, I don't believe in making dates, could happen during the Jubilee year. And this is the final Jubilee, 70th or 120th Jubilee. It's always important events will occur, So as my brother Mike covers, also it's not only the 70th Jubilee, but the 120th final Jubilee also. 50th Jubilee to Exodus from the book of Jubilees. So from creation to Exodus is 50 Jubilees, and from 1406 Joshua entering the promised land is to us the 70 Jubilees. So 120th Jubilee from creation, and 120 is the number of judgments, as it's, as it, what do you call it, God said to Noah, I will give you, in other words, 120 years, basically, before I send in judgment and the flood. So 120 is a number of Jubilee, and even 70th Jubilee, 70 is also the number of judgment. What do you call it, 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed by General Titus, and 70 years Israel was sent into Babylon captivity because of failing to keep sabbatical of the land in a Jubilee. So so the 70th Jubilee has started. So we must keep awake, because it's going to usher in, I believe, Jacob's trouble, as says Jesus indicated. So we need to keep awake and put faith in Christ, who is the only means of salvation. So, what do you call it? So how can, what do you call it, it help us, what do you call it, as Christians, knowing it's a Jubilee? As Christians, how can a Jubilee year encourage us? Well, Jubilee, it says, Jubilee highlights God's desire for restoration and renewal in all areas of life, including social and economic structures. This can inspire us to participate in acts of mercy to, the needy and the vulnerable, and justice. Also seeking to heal broken relationships and address inequalities. Also, Jubilee emphasis on the poor and marginalised should encourage us to be more compassionate and actively work to alleviate suffering. You know, the poor or those, needy, including volunteering, donating or other things to help benefit those that need it. Also, balancing work and rest. Jesus' affirmation of the Sabbath rest as a time for healing and connection with God can help us find a more balanced approach to work and leisure. In other words, not to overdo the work and leisure, when put more emphasis, on spiritual things. This can involve prioritizing rest and recreation, setting healthy boundaries and valuing time spent with loved ones, and also, importantly, spend precious spiritual time with learning about God. Living at Jubilee reminds us this life is not our final destination and can inspire us to live with a sense of purpose and focus on spiritual growth rather than accumulating wealth or status. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. If you haven't come to know Christ, please do, because Jacob's trouble, 7-year tribulation, could happen any time soon now. So let's put faith in Christ, who is the only means of salvation, the way, the truth and the life. God bless.